Homeless man saved the twins. 20 years later something amazing happened. The sleek glass walls of Cartertech's headquarters reflected the golden sunset, casting long shadows across Ethan Carter's corner office. At 32, he was one of the youngest CEOs in Silicon Valley, but success had come with a weight few could understand. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, his tablet forgotten on the desk behind him, its screen still displaying the headline that had stopped him cold. City's homeless crisis reaches breaking point. The article itself wasn't particularly remarkable, just another piece about the growing number of people living on the streets. But something about the accompanying photo, showing a homeless man huddled in an alley, had triggered a memory so distant it felt more like a dream. Warm hands lifting him from cold pavement. A gentle voice in the darkness. The sensation of being carried, protected, saved. A knock at his door broke through the reverie. "Still brooding, big brother?" Olivia Carter stepped into the office, her lab coat a stark contrast to the modern decor. Despite being twins, they couldn't have looked more different, Ethan with their father's strong features and dark hair, Olivia with their mother's golden curls and sharp green eyes. But they shared the same determined set to their jaw, the same restless intelligence that had helped build Cartertech into an empire. "I'm not brooding," Ethan protested, but his sister's raised eyebrow told him she wasn't buying it. "Fine. Take a look at this." He handed her the tablet. Olivia scanned the article, her expression softening. "The homeless crisis. Is this about him?" Ethan finished. "Our mystery savior. I've been thinking, we have resources now, connections. Maybe it's time we finally found him." "Ethan," Olivia said gently, "we've been through this. The police reports were vague, the witness statements contradictory. All we know is that some homeless man found us in that alley and called for help. That was almost 30 years ago. But that's just it." Ethan moved to his desk, pulling up files on his computer. "I've been doing some preliminary research. The foster care system keeps records, and with our current technology and AI capabilities, your AI capabilities, we might be able to find something new." Olivia set down the tablet, studying her brother. As head of Cartertech's AI research division, she knew better than anyone what their systems could do. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" "Dead serious," Ethan confirmed. "Look at us live. We're living the dream, successful company, cutting-edge technology, more money than we could ever spend. And none of it would have happened if that man hadn't found us that night." He pulled up an old news article, its edges yellowed even in digital form. "Abandoned twins rescued by homeless Good Samaritan." The grainy photos showed two tiny bundles being loaded into an ambulance. "We owe him everything, and we don't even know his name." Olivia was quiet for a moment, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her tablet. "Actually," she said slowly, "that's not entirely true. I might have done some digging of my own over the years." Ethan's head snapped up. "What? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to get your hopes up," she replied, pulling out her own tablet and connecting it to Ethan's system. "Most of what I found was dead ends, but there was one name that kept coming up in the old reports, Daniel Hayes." The name appeared on Ethan's screen, along with a scan of an old police report. According to this, he was the one who made the 911 call that night. But after giving his initial statement, he disappeared. The police wanted to question him further, maybe even give him a reward, but they could never find him again. Ethan leaned forward, hope kindling in his chest. "This is more than we've ever had before. We can work with this. Start with the shelters that were operating in that area back then, cross-reference with any records that might mention Daniel Hayes." "Already tried that," Olivia interrupted. "But here's where it gets interesting." She pulled up another file. "I ran his name through our company's historical database, just on a hunch. Ethan, he applied for an internship here. At Cartertech. 5 years after he found us." The revelation hung in the air between them. Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. "What happened to the application?" "Rejected," Olivia said grimly. "But that's not even the strangest part. When I tried to access his full application file, I hit a wall. It's been encrypted, sealed under Dad's old security protocols. Their father, Richard Carter, had been a legend in the tech world, brilliant, driven, and sometimes ruthless in his pursuit of innovation. He had adopted them 6 months after they were found, giving them not just a home but a legacy. After his death 5 years ago, Ethan had taken over as CEO, with Olivia leading the research division they had built together. Dad's protocols? Ethan frowned. Why would a rejected internship application be sealed at that level? Exactly. Olivia nodded. Something's not adding up here. This isn't just about finding the man who saved us anymore, Ethan. I think there's more to this story, something Dad never told us. Ethan stood, decision made. Then we find out what it is. Together. He held out his hand to his sister. Partners? Olivia took his hand, her grip firm and familiar. Partners. But we do this my way, methodical, careful. If there are secrets buried here, we need to be prepared for what we might uncover. As if in response, a notification popped up on Ethan's screen, an alert from their AI security system. Someone had just tried to access the same sealed files Olivia had mentioned, using an old administrative code that hadn't been used in years. The twins exchanged glances. They weren't the only ones interested in Daniel Hayes. The question was, who else was looking, and why? The next morning found Ethan and Olivia in the basement archives of St. Mary's Shelter, the musty air thick with decades of paper records and forgotten histories. Sister Margaret, a veteran shelter worker with silver hair and kind eyes, watched as they pored over yellowed logbooks. Daniel Hayes? She mused, adjusting her reading glasses. Yes, I remember him. Quiet man, but there was something different about him. He wasn't like our usual residents. You could tell he had education, refinement. Used to help fix our ancient computers when they broke down. Olivia looked up from the logbook she was scanning. When exactly was this? Must have been, about 20 years ago now. Sister Margaret replied. He stayed with us for almost a year. Always polite, always helpful. Then one day, he just disappeared. Left a thank you note and a fixed computer. Never saw him again. Ethan pulled out his tablet, checking the timeline against their research. This would have been right around the time he applied for that internship at Carter Tech. Carter Tech? Sister Margaret's expression changed subtly. Yes, I remember now. He was so excited about that application. Spent weeks preparing for it. Then something happened. He came back one night looking broken. That was the last time anyone here saw him. The twins exchanged glances. Another piece of the puzzle, but it only raised more questions. Sister Margaret, Olivia asked carefully, did Daniel ever mention why he was homeless? What had happened to him before? The old nun shook her head. He never spoke about his past. But sometimes, late at night when he was working on our computers, I'd hear him muttering about algorithms and code structures. Things way beyond my understanding. Once, I caught a glimpse of what he was working on. It looked like some kind of complex software design. Ethan's phone buzzed, a message from their office. The AI security team had traced a mysterious attempt to access Daniel's files. The login credentials belonged to Marcus Chin, their father's old partner who had retired years ago. We need to move faster, Ethan muttered to Olivia. We're not the only ones digging. They thanked Sister Margaret and headed to their next lead, the city's employment office. Years of connections and the Carter name opened doors that might have remained closed to others. Within hours, they were looking at Daniel Hayes' employment history. Look at this. Olivia pointed to her screen. Before he became homeless, Daniel worked as a software engineer at, wait, this can't be right. She double-checked the records. Ethan, he worked at Carter Tech. Not as an intern, he was a full employee. For 3 years. The revelation hit Ethan like a physical blow. That's impossible. We have records of every employee who ever worked for us. His name isn't in any of them. No, it isn't, Olivia agreed. Because someone erased him. Look at the dates. He worked there during the development of Atlas, Dad's breakthrough software. The one that put Carter Tech on the map. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustration mounting. None of this makes sense. Why would Dad hire him, erase all record of his employment, and then reject his internship application years later? And why did he end up homeless? I think I might know someone who can help us understand, Olivia said slowly. Remember Janet from HR? She's been with the company since the beginning. She might remember something. An hour later, they sat in Janet's small office, watching the elderly HR director's face as she looked at an old staff photo they'd uncovered. Her hand trembled slightly as she pointed to a figure in the back row, a younger, well-dressed man with intelligent eyes and a slight smile. "Oh my," she whispered. "I never thought I'd see his face again. Daniel Hayes, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. One of the best engineers we ever had. What happened to him?" Ethan pressed gently. Janet looked uncomfortable. "I probably shouldn't, but I suppose enough time has passed. Daniel was leading the Atlas project. It was his baby, his vision. But then, right before the launch..." She trailed off, looking troubled. "Please," Olivia urged. "We need to know. There was a dispute about ownership," Janet continued reluctantly. "Your father, he claimed Daniel had violated his contract, had used company resources for personal development. There was a huge fight. Security escorted Daniel out, and we were all told never to speak of him again. His name was removed from everything: project documents, employee records, even the staff photos." The twins sat in stunned silence. Their father, the man they had idolized, had not just erased Daniel, he had destroyed him. "But that's not even the worst part," Janet added, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "A week after Daniel was fired, your father patented the core algorithms of Atlas. The same algorithms Daniel had spent years developing." Olivia's hand found Ethan's, squeezing hard. The implications were staggering. Their father hadn't just stolen Daniel's work, he had stolen the very innovation that had built their empire. "There's more," Janet said, pulling out an old flash drive from her desk drawer. "I kept copies of some of the original development notes. Daniel had this vision. He wanted to create software that would help level the playing field, make technology accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. Your father, he had other ideas." As they left Janet's office, both twins were shaken to their core. The man who had saved their lives had once been part of their company's family. And their father, the man they had spent their lives trying to emulate, had ruined him. "We have to find him," Ethan said firmly. "Not just to thank him for saving us, but to make this right." Olivia nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Ethan, if we pursue this, if we really dig into what Dad did, it could shake Cartertech to its foundations. The scandal could destroy everything we've built." "Everything we've built?" Ethan's voice was bitter. "Or everything that was stolen from Daniel Hayes?" Before Olivia could respond, both their phones chimed simultaneously. Another alert from security. Someone had just accessed their father's personal files using Marcus Chen's credentials. But this time, they'd managed to decrypt part of the sealed records. A single document appeared on their screens, a legal agreement dated 20 years ago. At the bottom were two signatures, their father's and Marcus Chen's. But it was the title that made their blood run cold. Project Atlas, Original Ownership Transfer and Non-Disclosure Agreement. The truth was finally starting to emerge. But as Ethan and Olivia were about to discover, finding Daniel Hayes would be the easy part. The real challenge would be facing what their father had done to him, and deciding what they were willing to sacrifice to make it right. The private vault beneath Cartertech's headquarters had remained sealed since Richard Carter's death 5 years ago. Now, as Ethan input the override codes, the heavy door swung open with a soft hiss. The twins stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the climate-controlled chamber. "Dad's personal archives," Olivia murmured, running her fingers along the rows of servers and file cabinets. "Everything he wanted to keep hidden right here." Ethan moved to the main terminal, connecting it to their secure network. "Let's see what Marcus Chen was looking for." The screens came to life, displaying decades of corporate secrets. But it was a folder labeled Project Atlas original development. That caught their attention. Inside, they found something that changed everything: video recordings of the early development meetings. The first video showed a younger Daniel Hayes, standing before a conference room full of executives. His enthusiasm was infectious as he presented his vision. "Imagine software that adapts to the user's needs," Daniel was saying, his eyes bright with passion. "Not just responding to commands but anticipating them. Learning from each interaction to become more helpful, more accessible. We could revolutionize how people interact with technology, make it available to everyone, regardless of their technical expertise or economic status." The camera panned to show their father, Richard Carter, watching with calculated interest. Beside him sat Marcus Chin, scribbling notes, furiously. "The neural network I've developed," Daniel continued, "can process natural language inputs with unprecedented accuracy. But more importantly, it can learn from its mistakes, evolving to better serve the user's needs." Video after video showed Daniel refining the system, working late nights, pouring his heart into the project. Then they found the footage from the day everything changed. Richard Carter's voice was cold as he addressed Daniel in his office. "The board has concerns about the direction of Project Atlas. Your focus on accessibility over profitability is problematic." "But that's the whole point," Daniel protested. "This technology could help millions of people who can't afford." "This technology," Richard cut him off, "belongs to Carter Tech. And we'll determine how it's used." Daniel stood his ground. "I developed this system. The core algorithms are my work. Work done on company time, with company resources." Richard interrupted again. "Or have you forgotten your contract?" The next video was timestamped 3 days later. Richard sat with Marcus Chin, both men looking grim. "It's done," Marcus reported. "All traces of Hayes' involvement have been erased. The patents have been filed under Carter Tech's name. And Hayes himself? He won't be a problem. I've made sure he'll never work in tech again." Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "They didn't just steal his work, they systematically destroyed his life." More documents revealed the extent of the conspiracy. Marcus had used his connections to blacklist Daniel throughout the industry. Every job application was mysteriously rejected. His professional reputation was quietly but thoroughly ruined. "Look at this," Ethan said, pulling up another file. "Dad modified Daniel's original code. The version of Atlas they released, it was deliberately limited. All the accessibility features, the adaptive learning capabilities, they stripped them out. Because they couldn't monetize them the way Daniel intended." Olivia realized. They turned his vision of universal access into a premium product only corporations could afford. A notification popped up. Their AI had found something in the financial records. A series of large payments from Carter Tech to an offshore account, all authorized by Richard Carter personally. "Hush money," Ethan said bitterly. "But not for Daniel. These payments went to someone else." He traced the accounts. "To Marcus Chin. To keep him quiet about what they did to Daniel," Olivia concluded. "But why is he accessing these files now, after all these years?" Another video began playing, the last recording in the folder. It showed Richard Carter, looking older and tired, recording a message just months before his death. "If you're watching this," their father's image said, "then you've discovered the truth about Atlas. About Daniel Hayes." He sighed heavily. "I told myself it was necessary. That Daniel's idealistic vision would have bankrupted the company. That I was protecting our future, your future, Ethan and Olivia." The twins watched, transfixed, as their father's mask crumbled. "But the truth is, I was wrong. What we did to him, it haunted me. Every success Carter Tech achieved was built on his stolen dreams. And the cruel irony? He was the one who saved you both that night, though he never knew who you were. The man I destroyed was the same man who gave my children a chance at life." Tears streamed down Richard's face. "I tried to find him later to make amends. But he had vanished. Marcus assured me he was taken care of, but I never knew what that meant. And now," He looked directly into the camera. If you're seeing this, it means you're ready to know the truth. And maybe, to do what I never had the courage to do, make it right. The video ended, leaving the vault in silence. Dad knew, Olivia whispered. He knew all along that Daniel was our savior. And he chose to protect his secrets instead of helping the man who saved us. Ethan added, his voice hard with anger. But why is Marcus Chen looking into this now? What's his angle? Before Olivia could respond, an alert flashed on their screens. Someone had just logged into the company's patent system using Marcus Chen's credentials. They were attempting to transfer ownership of the Atlas patents. He's trying to cover his tracks, Olivia realized. Now that we're investigating, he's worried we'll expose everything, including his role in destroying Daniel's life, Ethan added. He straightened, decision made. We need to find Marcus Chen. And we need to find him now. As if in answer, another alert appeared, a news article from that morning. The headline made their hearts stop. Former tech executive Marcus Chen found finished. But it was the last line of the article that chilled them to the bone. Police report finding a note that simply read, "Ask the Carter twins about Daniel Hayes." Ethan and Olivia looked at each other, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them like a physical force. They had wanted to find their savior, to thank him for giving them a second chance at life. Instead, they had uncovered a web of betrayal that threatened to destroy everything they thought they knew about their family, their company, and themselves. And somewhere out there, Daniel Hayes was still waiting for justice. The headlines exploded across every major tech news outlet. Carter Tech co-founder found finished, questions surround tech executive's death. But it was the underground tech blogs that asked the dangerous questions. Who was Daniel Hayes? What was his connection to the Carter twins? Why had Marcus Chen mentioned him in his final note? Ethan and Olivia worked tirelessly, knowing they were in a race against time. With Marcus's death drawing attention to their search, they had to find Daniel before anyone else did. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a small coding forum where users shared open-source projects. Look at this, Olivia said, pointing to her screen. They were in her lab, surrounded by humming servers. Someone's been posting algorithms that look remarkably similar to Daniel's original work on Atlas. The coding style, the elegant solutions, it has to be him. The username was simple. Warm_Hands_Cold World. Warm hands, Ethan murmured. Like in my memory, warm hands lifting us from the cold pavement. Olivia traced the IP address to a small tech repair shop in a rundown part of the city. The twins exchanged glances, knowing this could be their only chance. Within an hour, they were pulling up outside. Hayes Electronics Repair. The shop was tiny, wedged between a laundromat and a convenience store. Through the grimy window, they could see an older man working at a cluttered bench, carefully soldering components on a circuit board. His hands were steady, precise, the hands of someone who had spent a lifetime building and fixing things. A bell jingled as they entered. Daniel Hayes looked up, his eyes sharp behind scratched glasses. 20 years of hardship had left their mark. His face was weathered, his hair gray and thin, his clothes worn but clean. But there was still something of the brilliant engineer in his careful movements, in the intelligence that sparked behind his eyes. "We're closed," he said automatically, then froze as he got a better look at them. Recognition flickered across his face, followed quickly by anger. "Get out, Mr. Hayes," Ethan began. "Please, we just want to talk." "I know who you are," Daniel cut him off. "Ethan and Olivia Carter. Richard's perfect children, running his perfect company. What could you possibly want from me?" "To thank you," Olivia said softly. "For saving our lives that night in the alley." Daniel's hands stilled on his work. For a moment, just a moment, his harsh expression softened. "That was a lifetime ago. 2 abandoned babies in the cold. I couldn't just leave you there." His face hardened again. "Of course, I didn't know then whose children you were. Ironic, isn't it? I saved the children of the man who would destroy my life. We know what our father did to you," Ethan said. "We found everything, The original Atlas code, the videos, the documents showing how they forced you out and stole your work. And what do you expect me to do with that information? Daniel asked bitterly. Your father won. He took my life's work, turned it into something I never intended, and made billions. While he gestured around the small shop. I fix broken phones and laptops for people who can barely afford to pay me. Olivia stepped forward, pulling out her tablet. We found your posts on the coding forums. You never stopped working on your original vision, did you? The adaptive algorithms, the accessibility features, you've been perfecting them all these years. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, pride, perhaps, or defiance. It was my dream. They could steal the code, but they couldn't steal the ideas in my head. We want to make it right, Ethan said. Return the patents to you, acknowledge your role as Atlas's true creator, compensate you for everything that was stolen. I don't want your money! Daniel slammed his hand on the workbench, sending tools scattering. I don't want your guilt or your pity. Do you think you can just walk in here and fix 20 years of injustice with a check? Do you know what it's like to lose everything? To watch something you created, something meant to help people, be twisted into a tool for corporate profit? No, Olivia admitted quietly. We don't know. We grew up privileged, protected by the very lies that destroyed your life. But we're not our father, Mr. Hayes. We want to do what he never had the courage to do, tell the truth and face the consequences. The consequences? Daniel laughed harshly. Do you even understand what that means? If you expose this, it won't just tarnish your father's legacy. It will shake Carter-Tech to its foundations. Your stock will plummet. Your board will revolt. Everything you've built could crumble. Let it crumble, Ethan said firmly. We'd rather rebuild on truth than continue profiting from lies. Daniel studied them for a long moment, seeing not the powerful CEO and brilliant researcher, but echoes of the helpless infants he'd found in that alley so long ago. You really mean that, don't you? We do, Olivia confirmed. But we need your help. Not just to set the record straight, but to fulfill your original vision. The world needs what you wanted to create, technology that serves everyone, not just the wealthy elite. And Marcus Chen's death? Daniel asked sharply. Was that part of your plan for truth and justice? The twins exchanged startled looks. We had nothing to do with that, Ethan protested. We think he was trying to cover his tracks, to hide his role in what happened to you. His note. Daniel interrupted, his expression changing. No. Marcus would never. He was trying to contact me, just last week. Said he had evidence, proof that went beyond what even I knew about. He wanted to meet, to tell me something important about the night I was forced out. He looked at them intently. Your father wasn't working alone. There were others involved, people with even more to lose if the truth came out. The implications hit them like a physical blow. If Marcus Chen had been murdered, if there were others involved in the conspiracy. We're not safe, are we? Olivia asked quietly. Daniel's answer was grim. No. None of us are. Not until we expose everything. He paused, conflict clear on his face, then seemed to come to a decision. There's something you need to see. Something I've been working on for the past 20 years. The true evolution of Project Atlas. Everything it could have been. Everything it still could be. He moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a secret room filled with servers and monitors. On the screens, lines of code scrolled past, beautiful, elegant, far beyond anything they'd seen before. This, Daniel said, his voice soft with pride and pain, is what your father tried to steal. What I've protected all these years. The question is, are you really ready to risk everything to make it right? Ethan and Olivia looked at each other, then at the man who had saved their lives twice now, once in that cold alley, and again by showing them the truth. Their answer was unanimous. We're ready. The next morning, Carter-Tech's board members filed into the emergency meeting room, their faces tight with concern. News of Marcus Chen's death had shaken investor confidence, and rumors about Daniel Hayes were already circulating through the tech world. They found Ethan standing at the head of the table, Olivia by his side, their expressions resolute. But it was the third person in the room that caused a stir. Daniel Hayes, standing quietly in the corner, his presence like a ghost from the company's past. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Gerald Walsh, the longest-serving board member. "Why is this person here?" "Because it's time for the truth," Ethan replied, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "Mr. Hayes isn't just some stranger. He's the original creator of Atlas, and we have proof that his work was stolen." The room erupted in protests and denials, but Olivia was already bringing up the evidence on the large screens. Videos, documents, patents, all telling the story of betrayal and theft that had founded their empire. "This is outrageous," Gerald sputtered. "Richard Carter was a visionary. You can't possibly believe." "I was there." Daniel spoke for the first time, his quiet voice somehow cutting through the chaos. "I created Atlas to help people, to make technology accessible to everyone. But Richard Carter and his partners had other plans." "Partners?" Ethan turned sharply. This was new information. Daniel nodded grimly. "Marcus Chin wasn't just covering up theft. He was protecting a consortium of investors who funded the operation. They're the ones who pressured Richard to steal my work, who helped orchestrate my downfall. And I believe they're the ones who finished Marcus when he threatened to expose them." The boardroom fell silent as Daniel pulled out a flash drive. "Marcus sent me this the day before he died. It contains records of meetings, transactions, agreements, all proving the existence of a shadow board that's been controlling Carter Tech from the beginning." As the files appeared on screen, several board members grew visibly pale. Names began to appear. Powerful figures in tech, finance, and politics who had secretly orchestrated the theft of Atlas and profited from its corrupted version. "My God!" Olivia whispered, recognizing some of the names. "These people, they're behind half the major tech companies in the valley. They saw the potential in my work," Daniel explained. "Not just for profit, but for control. The adaptive algorithms, the learning capabilities, in the right hands they could be used to influence how people interact with technology, to shape behavior on a massive scale. And now you want to expose them?" Gerald's voice had turned dangerous. "Do you have any idea what they'll do to protect themselves?" "We're counting on it," Ethan replied coolly. Before anyone could react, the doors opened and federal agents streamed into the room, led by a familiar face, Detective Sarah Martinez from the Financial Crimes Division. "We've been building this case for years," she announced, as her team began securing the room. "Mr. Hayes' evidence was the final piece we needed. Gerald Walsh, you and several other board members are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and in connection with the murder of Marcus Chin." As the agents began reading rights and placing people in handcuffs, Ethan turned to address the remaining board members. "Starting today, Carter Tech changes course. We're going to acknowledge Daniel Hayes as the true creator of Atlas, restore his patents, and implement his original vision. The stock will crash." Someone protested weakly. "Maybe," Olivia agreed. "But we'll rebuild. The right way this time." She turned to Daniel, who had been watching the scene unfold with a mix of vindication and disbelief. "That is, if you're willing to help us?" Daniel looked around the room, at the arrested board members being led away, at the younger board members who looked shell-shocked but relieved, at the twins who had risked everything to expose the truth. 20 years of anger and bitterness warred with the spark of hope he'd kept alive all these years. "Your father," he said slowly. "He made a choice all those years ago. He chose profit over purpose, control over innovation. Now you're choosing a different path, knowing it might cost you everything. We learned that from you," Ethan replied. "The night you found us in that alley, you could have walked away. But you chose to help, to do what was right, even though it cost you nothing." "Actually," Daniel said softly, "it cost me everything. But it also gave me something priceless." He looked at the twins, seeing not the powerful executives they'd become, but echoes of the innocent lives he'd saved. "It gave me a reason to keep going, to keep believing that someday, the truth would matter more than power." Olivia stepped forward, holding out a keycard, access to Cartertech's main development labs. Help us make it right. Not just the past, but the future. Show us how to build the world you imagined. Daniel took the keycard, its weight somehow both terrible and wonderful, in his hand. On the screens behind them, his original code for Atlas still scrolled, beautiful and pure, waiting to be unleashed as he'd always intended. The world's changed a lot in 20 years, he warned. The forces we're fighting, they won't give up easily. Good thing we have the original Atlas on our side. Ethan smiled. And its creator. As if in response to his words, alerts began flooding their phones. News was breaking about the arrests, about Daniel's true role in creating Atlas, about the Shadow Consortium that had controlled so much of the tech world. The story was exploding across every platform, impossible to contain or control. The revolution they'd started couldn't be stopped now. But as Daniel looked at his code, at the twins who had chosen truth over power, at the future suddenly opening up before them, he realized something profound. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about redemption, not just for him, or for Cartertech, but for the very soul of innovation itself. 6 months later, the Cartertech campus buzzed with an energy it hadn't known in years. The massive auditorium was packed with employees, journalists, and tech industry leaders, all waiting for the announcement that would reshape the future of technology. Backstage, Daniel adjusted his tie nervously. Gone were the worn clothes of the repair shop owner, replaced by a well-fitted suit that spoke of his new position. But his hands, those steady, capable hands that had once lifted 2 babies from a cold alley, still bore the marks of years spent fixing broken things. Ready? Olivia asked, appearing beside him. The past months had changed her too. The corporate polish remained, but there was something more authentic in her bearing now, a sense of purpose that went beyond profit margins. Almost can't believe it's real, Daniel admitted. Keep thinking I'll wake up back in my shop, fixing cracked phone screens. This is very real. Ethan joined them, tablet in hand. The new Atlas goes live today. Your vision, finally as it was meant to be. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. When the truth about Cartertech's origins had broken, the company's stock had indeed plummeted. Board members had resigned, investors had panicked, and competitors had circled like vultures. But something unexpected had happened too. As Daniel's story spread, the brilliant engineer who had saved 2 abandoned babies, only to have his life's work stolen by their adoptive father, public opinion had shifted. People were tired of tech giants putting profit over purpose. They were ready for change. 2 minutes, a stage manager called. Daniel took a deep breath, remembering the day 3 months ago when they'd first tested the new Atlas. The system had exceeded even his wildest dreams, its adaptive algorithms learning and evolving in ways that made technology truly accessible to everyone. The numbers from the beta test are incredible, Olivia said, checking her own tablet. Elderly users navigating complex systems with ease. Children in underfunded schools accessing advanced educational tools. People with disabilities interfacing with technology in ways they never could before. And that's just the beginning, Ethan added. The open source initiative has developers worldwide building on your framework, creating applications we never even imagined. Daniel nodded, thinking of all the lives that would change because of this. Your father, he said quietly. He saw Atlas as a way to control how people use technology. But giving people control of their own digital destiny, that's true power. The twins exchanged glances. Acknowledging their father's wrongs had been painful, but necessary. In the end, they had chosen to honor not the man who had raised them, but the values they wished he had embodied. It's time, the stage manager announced. They walked onto the stage together, the Carter twins and the man who had saved them twice, once through an act of kindness and again through his unwavering commitment to truth. The presentation was being streamed worldwide. Millions watched as Daniel demonstrated the new Atlas, showing how it could adapt to any user's needs, learning and growing with them. The interface morphed seamlessly from helping a child learn to read to assisting an elderly person with medication management to enabling a quadriplegic artist to create digital masterpieces. This is the future we promised 20 years ago, Daniel told the audience. Not technology that controls us, but technology that empowers us. Not innovation that divides us into haves and have-nots, but innovation that brings us together. The response was overwhelming. As he spoke, Cartertech's stock began to rise. Messages poured in from around the world, people sharing stories of how the beta version of Atlas had already changed their lives. But it was what happened after the presentation that truly marked the day's significance. In a small conference room, away from the cameras and crowds, Daniel sat with the twins and signed the papers that made him full partner in Cartertech, with control over Atlas's development. There's something else we want to show you, Olivia said once the paperwork was complete. She led them to a wall where a new installation had been mounted, a simple black and white photograph of an alley at night, beneath it a plaque that read, "In honor of the man whose warm hands lifted 2 lives from the cold, and whose brilliant mind lifted millions more from digital darkness. Daniel Hayes, founder of Atlas and true heart of Cartertech." Daniel stared at the installation, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "You didn't have to." "Yes, we did," Ethan interrupted gently. "This company's real story needed to be told." As if to emphasize his words, Daniel's phone buzzed with a notification. The open-source community had just released their 1000th Atlas-based application, a system to help homeless individuals locate resources and connect with support services. "Full circle," Daniel murmured, thinking of his own time on the streets. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Daniel found himself back in his new office, a far cry from the tiny repair shop. On his desk sat a framed children's drawing, clearly ancient and carefully preserved. It showed a stick figure with disproportionately large hands holding 2 small bundles. "I drew that," Olivia said from the doorway. "Right after we were adopted. I never forgot those hands that saved us, even if I couldn't remember your face." Daniel picked up the drawing, his fingers tracing the crude lines. "I never knew who you were," he admitted. "All I knew was that 2 tiny lives needed help. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness change everything." Ethan finished, joining them. "Which is exactly what Atlas is doing now, one user at a time." Daniel set the drawing down and turned to his computer, where lines of code scrolled past, his original vision, finally free to grow and evolve as intended. But now the code wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who needed it, everyone who would build upon it, everyone whose lives would be transformed by it. And as he watched the twins, no longer just the children he had saved, but partners in a vision larger than any of them, Daniel Hayes smiled. Not the cautious smile of a man who had regained what was stolen, but the joyful smile of someone who had found something far more precious, the chance to make his dream of helping others come true. In the end, it wasn't just about warm hands lifting babies from cold pavement. It was about lifting humanity itself into a future where technology served everyone, where innovation meant inclusion, and where the smallest act of kindness could spark a revolution. Daniel Hayes had come home. And this time, he wasn't just saving 2 lives. He was saving millions.